Healing the city one person at a time. That's the next part. I think that's the important part. So I need to write these down again. Okay, here we go. So we're just gonna say O versus O for the oppressed. Second one we're gonna put down is power. Third one is experience over reality. And four is social justice. All of these are symptoms of the things that need healed that we list before going wrong. Now, the one person at a time. Why is the village so into this? Okay, well, here's why. It's very simple. Jesus spent 3 years doing his ministry. He healed people, he taught. But when you look at it, he is very much about the individual, even when he preaches and talks to big groups. In general, he was a failed messianic character. But when he rose from the dead, what we find out is all of those people in whom he touched, when the Spirit poured out over the world, inside of Jerusalem, all the people he touched, well, they were ready for God. They were ready for the Spirit. They were ready. And so I think there's an invitation in following Jesus that you and I are called to the individual, to care for the individual in the ministry of reconciliation, to help soften their heart, to be open to the Spirit of God, to be open to being reconciled to one another and reconciled to God. And so when we talk about one person at a time, what's important when it comes to the oppressed and the oppressor is that all of us have stories. And so one person at a time allows us to give value to individual stories. And so what happens is that we actually go after something that happens very often, or is an effect of these symptoms up here. I don't know why I want to do that. I want to say systems. That's why. Okay, symptoms. Is that we want to group. And we want to have group stories and group identity. And we want to deal with people in groups. And what happens is we don't actually find the uniqueness of us being creatures created in God's image. We don't actually learn and understand the stories of the oppressed and the story of the oppressor. And so we are unable then, if we're not doing it one person at a time, really to help each other see that we are both the oppressor and the oppressed. Some of us have more egregious stories than others, and some of us have to spend time in mourning and be sad maybe about our history and really feel the weight of that. And for some of us, we have to offer forgiveness when we don't want to offer forgiveness. But this doesn't happen unless it's one person at a time dealing with stories of individuals. That's how that works. That's how we begin to bring the ministry of reconciliation. The second thing is power and the ideology of power. What happens is, again, we end up grouping ourselves when we talk about power, and then we begin to put ourselves in groups. And what we don't learn then is the impact of our own power. And I think these things work on top of each other. And so when I am able to engage one another, a single person, I'm able to hear their story and begin to see how my own power, things that I have, privileges I have, impact others. But they are also able to begin to think that through themselves. And what we are able to do together is dismantle it, because what happens is we start talking about it together. We start talking about how we experience one another. We begin to have meaningful conversations about our gender, about how we understand politics, what we think about life, how we've experienced misuse of power. But what we also begin to do, and is very important, is that we begin to depower, in a sense, power. Because Jesus faced power and let it kill him. And Christians never ever in the Bible, you don't see them in the New Testament discussing how people got power. Only what they should do with it when they have it. And so there is an invitation when we're engaging one another to create plans as communities on how we're going to call power itself to account, both in our own life and in our community's life and in our political system together. We can do that together. But if we aren't at one person at a time, if we're not engaging stories, that's not going to happen. And all of these things hopefully unify us at some level. So experience over reality. Experience over reality. I think one simple thing happens, that when you and I engage each other as individuals with stories, who all have different forms of power, is that we learn that elevating our experience is just simply selfish. That we begin, when I say that how I experience things is reality regardless of reality, and this comes to my race, to gender, to political realities, to economic realities, to social construct realities, all these things, when I say my experience of them is what is real over what actually is real, and you can begin to see this when you have conversations with people, and this allows you to confront it, I think, is that when their conversations attack people's stories, when they cast doubt on other people's experience and their motivation, you have an opportunity one-on-one to confront that. What happens is if we confront it as a group, a lot of times we get nowhere, because group identity doesn't have any kind of connection, right, to a person. And the last one is social justice. And I think when we engage one another, and particularly as we go out as followers of Jesus, we understand what real justice is. And we actually, in a sense, because justice is a practice of our religion, in a sense, we understand what it means in the sense that James tells us is what? True religion is to take care of the orphan and to take care of the widow. That like true justice is not to demand penalty for people, but true justice is to stand, I would say, stand in between individuals, and particularly the orphan and the orphan's oppressor, and the widow and the widow's oppressor. So we stand between them, between those who wish to harm and take advantage of and not care for, and at the same time, what justice is that we actually take care of them. Justice is we, as individuals, take on the needs and the needs of the orphan and the widow, the one who is basically without. Right? But we don't really, if we do this as a group again, if we group all the orphans together, then it's not our responsibility anymore. It's just somehow we got to fix the system that helps the orphan, that helps the widow, and that's social justice. We fixed that system. We march and demand something. We want changes in laws. I think that's all good, but it's not. It's like a way down here. What's good is when you're burdened. Justice is when you're burdened by the orphan, when you're burdened by the widow, when their burden is yours. That's what true justice is. That's when you're saying, this is not right in God's divine order, and I am going to step in and bring a rightness to this place. But justice is also saying God values people and you can't harm them, and so therefore I will stand in front of those who wish to harm them and take the brunt of it. That's what justice is. Right? Now that may change a system, but that's the route. And so for us at the Village, and this may not be for everybody, but the way we understand being ministers of reconciliation is being people who deal with one another as individuals, which something happens then. And this will be kind of my close. And as I said at the beginning, these are all my ideas thrown up in one place, so you can kind of think about them. But we'll close with this. The one person. I'm not like Michael. I don't have cool diagrams. But here's the person, the circle. When you engage the person, you find out that the person has friends. When you engage the person, you begin to see that they deal with race in a certain way. When you begin to deal with the person, you hear their stories of oppression. When you deal with the person, you begin to hear their longings for justice. The people they care for. And all of a sudden, you have their friends. And you are part of their community and their story in this area. You are caring for the people they care for. You begin to adopt their longings for justice. You begin to understand their oppression. And what happens is their friends, and it goes off, and all of a sudden, it's not really one person at a time anymore. But it is. And that's what's so beautiful to me about all of this. So, I think there's some serious things that need healing, and there's some serious things, some symptoms in the city. And you probably, for some of you, you disagree with me about the symptoms. And I would love to talk to you about those symptoms. And I haven't put any solutions on how we engage those. I mean, I didn't put them in a lot of detail. But those are the symptoms in my mind, and those are the ones I want to push against, and those are the things I feel called to process and think about. Now, hopefully, as a community, we can begin to put more thought on this, and we can begin to take it and make it more, we can build more things that, like we have been doing with Truth. We'll have some more different kinds of rock tumblers as we process through this and begin to think about how we actually do it, how we're ambassadors and ministers of reconciliation. That said, Sue is going to sing a blessing.